Hey Bruce, how you doing?
Hey, yeah, how's it going, Rowan? You good?
Very well, thank you. Very well indeed. How are you struggling through this weird period of ours?
Well, trying to keep myself busy, reading more books, trying to go to the gym loads, and trying not to eat all of the chocolate in the house as soon as it's bought, because weekly shops mean that once it's gone, unfortunately.
It is the case. It is the case. I think even my mum will attest to that. I wish I could go and
Mm.
see my mum because then I would just raid their larder. But how are you
Mm.
able to get to the gym at the moment? Have you got? Do you mean like home gym?
Yeah, home gym. So in the other room, got a couple of weights, and I say it's the gym. It's really just the spare room, but it feels much better when you say it's the gym. You're kind of like, I'm off to the gym. Really, it's the same other room of my flat, but if it feels like another place, it makes it feel so much nicer.
It does indeed, and that's what I quite like about going to the gym. It's the fact that it feels like a resort away from home. If I end up doing some sit ups or using my resistance bands, which I had to wait about 5 weeks for, which is a real pain, then it doesn't quite feel like it. And then I have to go and run outside. Bruce, do you know how difficult it is to run outside? I like a treadmill. I like not having to look at people or the scenery. I just want to see a wall. And then
Yeah,
I want the treadmill to control my pace, not me, not my own, ambition.
yeah. Want to concentrate on the music, not on cars and people and bikes and everything else that goes on around you.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
completely get you, man.
Well,
Completely
look,
get you.
thank you, thank you. At least someone does. It takes a lot of people don't. But Bruce, thank you so much for coming on. For everyone who doesn't know, Bruce Pannaman is the technical co-founder of StorkCard, which is essentially a credit card for parents dealing with the financial shock of having a kid for the first time. I definitely took that description from your website, but I managed to remember
Mm.
it. But Bruce, would you be able to just explain to us a little bit more about what StorkCard is and how it works?
So the basic idea around StorkCard is that nobody likes finance. Finance is boring. You name one person who really, really was keen to get their mortgage. Like, it's the most exciting thing they bought that year, better than all of the CDs, better than all the holidays. There's nobody. People want the house. The mortgage is the boring financial thing in the way. So we approached some of the really expensive life stages of your life, which have a big financial impact. So the big ones really are retiring, you've got pensions, buying a house, mortgages, going to university, student loans. But having a child, the average couple spends £150,000 per child over their childhood, but there's nothing out there to solve it. So we thought, let's go out there and do it. So the main aspects of StorkCard is it's not just a card, it's not just a financial product. The idea is that it's a tool to help you with that life stage. It's very exciting. There's lots of new things. Everyone comes at it for the first time, and it's like, oh, this is nothing like I thought it would be. But it's great fun whilst you're going through it. And we abstract all of the boring finance away and almost put your money on autopilot so you can focus on the joys of having kids and not necessarily the costs.
I like that. So it's like you've recited that before, and it's almost like you're working in the business. That's
This is
and
part of founding a company. You end up dreaming it or kind of saying it in the shower when you kind of can't
yeah, I
think of
can
anything
imagine,
else.
man.
Yeah.
And so from my understanding of it, it's so you've got reward aspects to it as well. You've got affiliate partners such as who have you got? You've got Mamas and Papas, Baby Bjorn. You've also got budgeting as well, where you can actually share the I don't want to say burden, share the outgoings of looking after your kid with obviously
Hmm.
family members who help look after them as well. What else? What other features does the product have? Because unfortunately, I was going to download the app and I was on route to doing so, but obviously. Yeah, I didn't want to take any of your cards away. Plus, I didn't want to. I just felt bad
Oh.
downloading it.
Well, you've nailed quite a few. So the real power of what we're doing is because we're trying to take a life stage and a conversation which usually happens on forums or tiny Facebook groups and building a giant community out of it. We're starting to build some really good insights into the algorithm we're building. So lots of parents come up to it for the first time and say, right, guys, I'm having our first child in 5 months. What do I do? And everyone starts going, oh, well, you need all this stuff and you need to buy this, you need to buy this. And there's all these other things you need to think about. And you're just like, oh, it's too much. What we do is we make a bespoke version of what's going to happen and we break it all down. We know all the things that you've told us when you register in the app. And from that, we can drill down and say, actually, you don't need that. Actually, this is there, but you want to buy the cheaper version of this. This is coming up much later. Don't worry about it. And just really chunk it and break it down either into monthly segments or into, we call them milestones, so kind of development milestones. And it makes everything much easier to handle, much easier to deal with. In terms of the sharing aspect, StorkCard really is a joint account on steroids. Most people think about joint accounts and they think, well, it's just me and my partner. But why does it have to be that? You know, if you're running a household and generally people live together in couples or kind of in families, it makes sense to just have it as a couple. But when you're raising a child and dealing with the money there's so many more people involved. There's your parents who end up looking after their grandchildren every now and again. There's your brother and sister who might take your child out for the weekend and have some fun. There's the neighbor down the hall who looks after your child after school on Tuesdays and you've got that important meeting. You might have nannies, you might have childminders. And all of these people, I mean, they're your support network, or as we call in StorkCard, your StorkCard village. And we want to bring these people in as close as possible because when you're trying to battle through some of these things and work these things out, the more people around you, the better. Not just on the organising childcare side, not just on the planning side, but on the financial side as well. You know, when a child is below 3, they're probably more interested in the wrapping paper than what you get them for their birthday present. I mean, it's as bad as that sounds, it's true. So when you're buying presents for a child that's younger than 3, really you're buying for mum. So having a really good idea and everyone sharing the idea of what's coming up, what is the big things that are there means they can help out the child as much as possible. And the whole idea of StorkCard is this isn't just to do with babies. Later on, when they get older and they go through and they start going to school, what about school holidays? What about summer camps? What's nearby? How much does it cost? When should I start planning and putting it all together? Even older than that, we're talking about school uniforms, school trips. All of these things keep going, even until they've left the home, there's more and more things to happen. So it's getting together, sorting out a plan right at the beginning and letting StorkCard tell you in advance what's happening. So there's no freaking out of thinking, oh no, like kids growing out of the babies out of the car seat. Oh, I need a new one. Quick, throw it on the credit card. Idea is that doesn't exist. You get a ping from the app and it says, hey, 5 months or so, give or take, you're going to need a new car seat. This size is about this much. Let's get the village together. Birthday's coming up. Let's ask for money to help out. And it's all about stopping short-term, high-interest debt, which people sometimes do when they're in emergencies, because your kids are everything. You know, there's no thing you wouldn't do for your kids. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, that does involve really horrible credit card debt. So for us, it's all about sharing it out, giving warning so you can plan, budget, put it together, and then we help out with that.
Yeah, I mean, there is obviously there's always an issue of parents panic purchasing for children at very short notices. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And so the idea for StorkCard, because I understand that you and your co-founder Andres met at a networking event. How long ago was that? 3 or 4 years ago, or a bit further?
No, it's about two years ago now.
2 years ago now. And so how did the idea come about?
So the idea came about. So I don't have kids myself. Andres has kids, and they're lovely. They go on all of the posters, and you know they're almost the mascots of StorkCard.
Are they the ones on the Sorry to interrupt. Are they the ones on the onboarding screen?
No, they're in the video though. Okay. They're in the YouTube video.
Fair enough.
So the idea came along with his kids. So his first child came along, and it was great. And him and his partner took some shared parental leave. They bonded, they had lots of good times, and then they went back to work. Second child came along, not quite so planned. They hadn't necessarily replenished their savings yet. And it came to a position where they couldn't take the parental leave they wanted. They had to go to work early because they couldn't necessarily afford to halve their household income as long as they had done before. So, you know, the 2 a.m. club, feeding, you know, every parent out there knows exactly where you're coming from. sitting there, you're sort of half awake. One hand's got your phone out, other hand's got the baby, and the other hand feeding. And you just think to yourself, why is there nothing out there to help? I mean, every third ad I get from my Facebook feed is another app to help out with this, another app to help out with that. Why is there no app for this? So Andreas went out and said, right, we need to change this. As I said before, there's financial products for other big life occasions, nothing for having kids. So big gap in the market. So he went out, he started putting ideas together. He started asking people, doing the initial research. And then I got involved. So we met at this co-working event, so it's a co-founder event. I was just finishing up with another company that I was part of, and I was really keen for a new challenge. I've always been a stickler for social impact companies. The last thing I want to do is slog my heart out for 50 hours a week to buy some boss his second yacht. I want to do something which changes people's lives. I want to do something which makes a real positive impact. And I really saw StorkCard as something that can help. Lots of people, really, really want kids. Loads of people really, really want to make a happy family and make the rest of their family happy all the way through the different generations. And it's a very happy event. And there's one kind of ugly side of it, which is the cost of it all. More divorces happen because of money issues than anything else. So dealing with that thing in general, just as one single thing to focus on, will make, in general, happy families a lot happier and help with their financial health. So I thought it was a great cause. So I came in, we started playing around the idea, did the branding, changed the name, came up with a roadmap of how we get through to what we ultimately want to achieve, and then just started. And then a year and a half later, here we are.
And so obviously getting involved in the fintech industry is something that's always considered quite daunting. How did you feel when you were approached by Andreas? Obviously, it was something that you just mentioned was something you wanted to get your teeth stuck into, but was it daunting to get involved in such a highly saturated and competitive industry?
It was to a certain extent. So when I started, I was blissfully naive to finance and what it involved. He's been a JP Morgan partner there for years and years and years, so he knows exactly what's involved, which really is the key to our partnership, where we kind of got those both sides of the yin yang. He's the fin, I'm the tech. The company I was running before was very robotics focused. So I was looking at it going, yes, this is software. This is lovely. I can close my laptop and it's all done. There's no noises going on. There's no things blowing up over there. It's nice and clean, and I can build it, and it's replicable, and it can scale. And I found that really, really exciting at the beginning. Then when all the financial compliance stuff started coming in, this is when I went, oh, actually, I've swapped one thing for another. Once you get through it, it doesn't get much better. It's still incredibly boring. All of the forms, all of the silly questions, all of the regulation, it's part of what you got to do. But when you sit back and think why it's happening, it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of money laundering going on out there, which is all to do with, sex trafficking, to do with drug dealing, and really terrible things that are, terrible for the world. So you get to do your bit to make sure that you can stop that and make it, avoid happening. And then there's fraud that destroys a whole lot of lives. So within those two things, there's a really nice thing you can do by putting your head down, going like, I know this is really boring, but this is really important. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it responsibly. If I'm going to help, there's no point helping these people over here to create some terrible situation over there. In terms of the competition, everything running up, this regulation means it's not that competitive compared to a lot of industries. It's competitive in the sense that it's very burgeoning. And after the crash of 2008, when the government decided that they really needed to bring some competition into the banking sector, we're kind of seeing the flourish of this. But being in our kind of Shoreditch tech city bubble, it seems very easy to see that there's lots of different tech companies out there doing finance stuff. But the moment you go out of the bubble, there isn't much. And this was a key learning that we made as a company when we started off. We started off thinking, Monzo, Revolut, Starling, everyone's gone, right? That's nothing special. But when we started going in, talking to users, we started going to baby shows, we started to, all the different conferences we went to, we did a couple of surveys, and it turns out most people have never heard of these banks. They bank with Nationwide, because Nationwide is the closest bank branch to the car park on their local high street. So it's competitive in the sense that there's lots of people starting. But in terms of who people bank with and what people do with their finances, there's a lot of market space out there that hasn't been touched since 1850 or whenever Lloyd started.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that, would you? Especially considering the extent of which the waves which fintech is making at the moment.
Yeah.
Obviously, starting out as a CTO with a CEO, there are often talks that there are a lot of faults to iron out in the relationship between a CEO and CTO in the initial stages. What kind of difficulties have you encountered working or in terms of the division of labor between yourself and Andres?
So we work really, as I said, we're kind of like a yin and yang situation where he is very much about the finance, very much about how you build the bank itself. And then I'm very much about hacking things together to make it happen. So I'm much more practical and he's much more theoretical, which works really nicely to divide everything out. When we get into discussions around things, usually it's because I want to kind of growth hack something, make it happen super quick. Let's throw something I've made in 20 minutes out there, see what it does, react, and then iterate. And then Andres will say, well, actually, we can't do it that way. We have to do this properly. There's regulations, there's responsibilities we have. I go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Let's compromise. And instead of, doing things like big banks and spending 2 years to do something easy, let's release something in a month. We'll get, minimum checks and balances, get these things sorted, get the minimum lovable product that we can fit in, and we'll do a month instead of 2 weeks. So we got on really well as really good friends to make sure we come to these compromises. And when it comes to, big decisions which founders go through together, things like cap tables, things like salaries, stuff like that, we have a really good system where what we do is we'll meet up to have a meeting about something. We'll say something we want to discuss, but we don't necessarily want to have an argument about. We'll both grab a bit of paper, rip it in half. Each of us will take a piece, write down what we think is fair, fold it up, walk away, go home, don't talk to each other until the next morning. And then by the next morning, you would have thought about it. You would have kind of seen it from their point of view. And then generally that means we agree on things. It's a really good tactic we use. I think there's the 3 reasons why startups usually fail is kind of they don't get funded, no market need, and founders fall out. So, at least you've got 2, 1 or 2 or 3 of those sorted.
No, for sure. And where did you get inspired to start? Where did you get that trick from? That little tactic?
The trick was from my previous company where I ran it with 3 other childhood friends. We'd known each other since we were 5 primary school. And that was even more difficult to keep that going because we had lifelong friendships and we were running businesses together. So we had to really work on our relationship and really work on how to separate that work relationship and that friend relationship. And this is a tactic we came up with so that we can get the bits of paper, put it in the pockets, and all just have a beer and a pizza together and remain friends when the laptops were down and we were all clocked out. And that was really important because I think when you've got lifelong friends like that, as good as a business can be, you don't want it to ruin friendships like that.
No, for sure.
Friendships are much more important.
Yeah, for sure. That was a very prudent move to make. So let's talk about obviously product market fit. You said that initially you were doing market research by going to obviously all the baby shows and everything like that. What was your process to establish there was a market for the product, and then how did you adapt the product to fit it? I suppose it's a big question.
Yeah. So fintech's a really difficult one on that because there is this rule by the FCA that you can't advertise or publicize something you're not regulated for. So, all of the lean startup methodology, all of the kind of growth hacking thing says, create a ghost MVP, throw it out there, see what the reaction is, and then build it. Because then if nobody wants it, you kind of realize and you spent the minimum effort doing it. But in this particular case, you can't do it. So what we had to do is work out where that line between regulated activity was and what was below it. And we did the MVP stuff with the stuff below it. So this is where we built our budgeting algorithm. This is where we built our planner features, which, they're not financial advice in any way. They're completely guidance. So not regulated in the slightest. We can throw it out in any which way we want. We started to put the feelers out for that first, because that as a product in itself is quite useful. It's just the revenue potential is a lot higher with the banking side. So once we got users there, Then we started to talk to those users, phone them up, email them, find out what they wanted, do competitions to see, if people could guess what our next feature was, which is quite
Sorry, Bruce.
interesting. Which usually,
How did you recruit the first users on board? How did you manage to get them interested?
the first users on board. So the way that people talk about things online with parenting and everything like that, a lot of Facebook groups, and they're very, very tiny Facebook groups. So they're quite easy to come into, start a conversation, and they get really good engagement because they're not really, really big. So
Yeah,
for
true
instance, there's a
growth
Putney
hacking
Mums
tactic.
Facebook group. Yeah, you've got to start small. If you go onto the big stuff, like the Mumsnet and the kind of Net Mums and stuff like that, you'll get drowned out of so much noise, and there's so many angry voices on there that you don't want to kind of add to it. So we started really small, really local Facebook groups, usually 2,000 tops. And what it means is when something gets posted, it means it's quite important and quite relevant. So from there, we started discussing the ideas, seeing what people liked, seeing what people didn't. And then we started building a waiting list for the non-regulated part of the app. And then once we had people on there, then we started growing it from there. Then once we kind of got our initial funding round, we started getting our license together, started putting it all together so that we can have what we have today. And we were always trying to talk to customers as much as possible, whether it's kind of just getting feedback or whether it's customer service, working out what's going wrong so we can make it better. In terms of the wider product market fit, it's a very revolving market. For every person who has a baby today, somebody's kids go to school, and kind of the main part of what we have right now is not quite as relevant as it was when you're pregnant with a toddler or with a toddler. So there's a really nice bit of churn of users to bring in new ideas and new trends, etc.
Decent. And so obviously once you established, I think one of the main issues that CTOs encounter as well is obviously recruiting the right tech team. How did you go about the recruitment process? Because obviously you've got huge, good. Are you doing most of the development, or have you got a couple of back end?
I'm doing most of it.
Okay.
I'm doing most of the development. There's kind of some people that are sort of helping out on the side, whether it's like advisory or kind of little bits here and there, which is quite good. But for the most part, I'm doing most of the development.
Wow. And what kind of so what are the main issues that you've encountered during developing your own product?
So the main thing is kind of what I enjoy about being a developer. You're sitting in a meeting. It's a brainstorming meeting about things you could do, and you're with a whole load of non-technical people, and they say, "Wouldn't it be good if we could do this?" Oh yeah, and then it could do this as well. And the kind of excited founder part of you goes, "Oh, that'd be amazing if we could do that. It'd be so good." And the developer part at the back of your brain goes, "How are we going to do this, Bruce? I have no idea how this technology works." So you go, yeah, I mean, I'll see what I can do. And you act all calm and collected, and you leave the room and you go, oh God, what have I just promised? So lots of research. I'm a very self-taught developer. I haven't got a computer science degree or anything like that. So the real lifesaver is meetups, lots of different communities, whether it's Slack groups, whether it's Facebook groups. Everyone is always talking about something you don't know yet. And knowing you don't know something is so much better than not knowing you don't know about something. Because when you realize you have that moment of how the hell am I going to do this, you then remembered that there was a meetup 3-4 months ago where somebody was talking about whatever technology you were going to use, and you go, oh, well, I'll just pull up my notes on that, or kind of at least I know what to Google. Because whether as really hot developers as there are in the industry, everyone just Googles everything. That's just how it works. But having a really good knowledge out there and working out what's there and having the network around you to ask for help. There's lots of people out there where if you help them, they help you. And if it's something that you're super familiar with, you can kind of do a 5-minute Slack phone call and you've solved their issue, which would take them half a day to solve. And it's always the same vice versa, it's just part of really being open and kind of saying, this is the issue. What do you suggest? And if you do the same thing, other people do the same to you. On the recruitment side, the real trick to recruitment is kind of being into the right networks. It kind of goes the same with like fundraising and everything. If you're hanging out with people who are really interested in the stuff that you're interested in already, they will be interested in what you're doing. So if I'm hanging out with a whole load of people at Django meetups and a whole lot of people at React Native meetups, for example, which are two core tech stacks, if I say, oh, I could really do with another front end developer, I've got a whole room of people that I go to every month who are React Native developers, and one of them in that room is going to want a job. So without having to pay a whole lot of recruitment fees and without having to kind of search through job boards, you have people at the back of your mind where you kind of think, yeah, I'd really like to hire you at some point. This would be amazing. And when you get the chance, you kind of think, yes, this is the person to hire. I can't wait to kind of make this interview a reality.
That's superb. And obviously you mentioned, because it's very, very important, obviously, to have certain parameters in place that you're going to base your recruitment tactic on as well. What kind of parameters do you base your recruitment on? I know obviously you're pretty much developing everything yourself at the moment, but obviously you've obviously had to recruit people in the past, haven't you, as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a team of around 6 now in StorkCard. There's not as much tech in there, but there's a lot of different other roles that we have.
Okay.
So the things that I really think about is, I can't remember who said it, but it really rings true. It's like culture eats strategy for breakfast. If you have the right first 10 employees, it's like a stack of cards where you've got a really solid base and you build on top of that. If somebody is not quite right culture-wise, it means the whole thing can fall down. If you have a company of less than 20 and somebody quits, for example, I mean, that would send shockwaves, and that's something really to worry about. Whereas if you have a company of 500 people, one person quits, it's kind of not that big a deal. So you really have to think about, are people growing? And do I have the potential to, do I have at my hand something to help them grow? Because if they're growing, they'll stay. Are they going to fit with the culture? Do they believe in the mission of what we're doing? Or are they just turning up for the paycheck? If they really believe in the mission of what we're trying to do, they'll go as above and beyond as us as founders will. And that is super key to make sure you've got the best people at the beginning. And the other thing is, don't hire on experience, hire on potential. So just because somebody hasn't been doing something for 5 years at some big company, if it's something they want to learn to do and they really, really want to develop their career in that situation, in a year's time, they'll be much fresher on everything. They'll have a brand new perspective, and also they'll be hungry for even more. So it's really making sure you kind of look at what things they've done in their past, which aren't necessarily the things which they're going to be doing in their job, but something that proves that when they go, I'm going to do that, they can take that commitment through and make it all happen.
So just moving on to obviously marketing and PR, we were having I noticed that you've obviously appeared in a fair few FinTech journals. You've been in FinTech Global a couple of times. Obviously, the amounts you've done in terms of marketing over the first year and a half since you've launched, I think it's coming on to 2 years. Was it September? It was September 18, and you got your first round of funding in November.
Yeah.
18, is that right? Yeah. Okay.
So we launched August 2019. That was when we first launched the app.
Okay. Oh, right. So you launched August 2019. When did you get your first round of investment then?
November 2018.
Okay, cool. Okay, so you actually launched the app, so obviously you needed to get investment before development took place. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so in terms of obviously the amount of work you've done remarketing over the last 7-8 months, how come you've been able to get so much media attention, as it were?
I think a lot of it goes into the fact that it's something very new. The marketing space with StorkCard is we're kind of stuck in the middle of a triangle where at the top you've got, blockchain, crypto, FinTech, business side, of TechCrunch sort of world. And then down here on this side of the triangle, you've got cute babies, Instagram, the kind of parenting world. And then you've got the social impact world over here, which is family finance and making sure that, people are progressing forward and really helping people. So within that space, we kind of bounce around between those 3 points all the time. And there's nobody else that has that mix of things. There's lots of times the FinTech media hear things about, oh, yep, it's another card. Oh, yep, it's another robo-advisor, where we are very, very different, where at the core we're those things. But as I said before, like the banking stuff is boring. It's what it does for you and how it helps your lifestyle that's important and what people focus on. So the fact that we brought that front and center was really, really refreshing for a lot of publications. And the social impact side as well was really, really important to make sure that, people could really get behind it. And the fact that we really were focused on making things better for families instead of just kind of churning out another unicorn.
Fair enough. And so in terms of obviously, I think we were discussing this before, but I thought it's actually quite a good little story about how you actually came up with the brand name and the actual logo itself, just moving away from PR.
Yeah. So the brand itself, we were very focused on trying to make it as relevant as possible, trying to make it not seem like a bank. Because as I said, banks are boring. We need to seem like something more. We need to seem like that helping hand, which under the hood, when you open up all the hatches, just happened to be a banking institution underneath. So within that, we kind of thought, right, well, let's think about what is a helping hand? What is in that situation when you're having kids? We want it to be slightly traditional, but then we can put a new face on it and modernize it. And we settled on the stork. I always think about storks, and I think about the stork from Dumbo, and he's quite a cool character. So we got rid of the long legs, and we started to build it all through. We got a really nice marketing agency to help us out with that, a very good mum-focused one. It's called Mothers of Innovation was their name, and just the title says it all. So we were hooked from the first meeting, and we went through on there.
No, that's awesome. Because you were saying quite a bit about diversity within the company as well.
Yeah, it's something which we focused on from the beginning because we're quite aware that it's one of our weaknesses. We started as a founding team. We're kind of both male, white, London-based people, and it's not particularly diverse, which means that we're missing out on all of those ideas, all of those perspectives, and all those voices in the room. So in all the recruitment we've done since, and all of the advisory boards we've been doing as well since, kind of everyone involved in StorkCard, we're really keen to get those other voices in so that we can represent and understand as much of our user base as possible. So a big thing we're doing there is we've got a partnership with Toynbee Hall, who is a charity out in Whitechapel. We do focus groups with them all the time and make sure that we bring in the local community and as many different diverse cultures as we can who are users of StorkCard to see how they use it, how they think about it, how their families deal with having kids, and how different cultures help people in the family with different kids, who are going through that experience. And that really helps us work through the use cases and work through different parts of the company to make it work as well as possible.
Awesome. And obviously, in terms of the marketing approach you've been taking to recruit new customers as well, what has been your process as you've continued? Because obviously you were doing a lot of testing the market with your beta users and beta testers by accessing Facebook groups and the like, conversing with parents. What's been your continued marketing tricks and techniques that you've been using to recruit more and more customers on board and get them all on board?
With early startup marketing, the major risk is to kind of start with the Facebook hash pipe, because once you get too addicted to paid marketing, it just becomes a massive bane till later on. You raise some money, you give it to Facebook. You raise some money, you give it to Facebook. And, the investors might as well just give it to Facebook and skip the middleman. PPC has its place. So I don't think there's anywhere else in any other channel where you can get copy feedback as quickly. So you brainstorm and you think about a new way of thinking about StorkCard that will pull people in, and you kind of go, right, well, how do we test this in 6 hours, whether it's a hit or not? Put together a Facebook ad campaign, you'll know in 6 hours. However, it's not sustainable. The real key to StorkCard going through is to build up that virality, to build up a way that people recommend them to each other. So, the default thing with FinTechs is, you've got a whole lot of people out for a coffee and it comes to payment time and everyone slaps their cards down onto the table to split the bill. Now, that is the real key way that FinTech has marketing virality, which no one else really has. But obviously, you need to have really engaged customers. You need to have people meeting up in the right way to do it. It's relatively slow. So, partnerships are the real way that we see the future of doing this. So whether that is making sure we partnership with big mum brands like Mumsnet, or whether we deal with Toynbee Hall, or whether we deal with, NCT, for example, which is a really big parenting charity which sets up WhatsApp groups for different parents when they're starting out. That will really help us boost that virality and make sure that we pull people in. And the other thing is, by the nature of our product being a joint account, it by itself brings different people in. You come into the app and you set up a StorkCard account, and now it's time to add your partner. Now it's time to add other people in your family. So it's making sure that the growth loop within the product itself is as viral as possible. So you're kind of covering all those bases.
Yeah, that's superb, and you kind of built it that way as well. Especially where, as you were mentioning earlier, you essentially, your StorkCard is there to grow with the child as well, which is a fabulous idea.
And the family.
And the family, yeah. So you'll be there from day one. So you mentioned as well, obviously, your affiliate partners. What was your process about obviously approaching them in the first place? It must have been quite difficult to get them on board initially. Was it not? To get them excited about being a partner? But I suppose it's free money, isn't it?
There's a little bit of that, but there's also a massive shake-up happening in that industry at the moment. So Mothercare had a massive amount of market share, and they just went out overnight. So there's a big industry uprising going on there where there's just so many small sellers. People don't really buy retailers, they buy brands in this space. You want to buy a Bugaboo pram, you'll buy a Bugaboo pram. It doesn't matter whether it's sold by, Timothy's Baby Care down the road or by John Lewis up the other side of the high street. It's just wherever you can get the deal quickest. So this is a real opportunity for lots of smaller online resellers who can drop ship all these products and pull it through. However, getting market share, getting sales amongst so many different people selling almost the same products is really, really difficult. So the way we go through it is, the way our product works with these discounts is the fact that we are trying to anticipate that need so that you can think about it carefully. You're not impulse purchasing, and you're buying what you truly need or what you truly want, but not something you've just quick buy it now. So within that, what the actual fallacy of buying things which you're going to use over a amount of time is quality is cheaper. The first time that I kind of started looking into this and started building the cost prediction algorithm, I thought to myself, I looked at a pram and thought, what, it's a bit of plastic with 4 wheels. How the hell is this £450? But when you go deeper and you realize, okay, well, there's more expensive ones and there's cheaper ones. But if you're immediately hit with that cost, you're going to go for the cheaper one because that's what you've got available at the time. But after 6 months, it might break and you need another one. And then maybe you have another child and then it'll break at some point. You need another one to get them through. And by that point, you've bought 4 prams. So even if you save and buy one that's £200 cheaper, you're paying more than if you bought the high quality one at the beginning. So there's a real point here around product education, showing the difference between different things, which means that as people are told in advance and get to that purchase point, they've thought about it a lot more. They've looked at the reviews a lot more. And to the retailer who's selling them that expensive pram, the basket size is higher. So they're getting more money than would do otherwise. The other thing is just getting the trust of the retailers. In the situation when, parents or a Stork Village is saving up for an expensive item, they're saving up and they know there's a discount once they've saved up the money. And to get that and make sure that's there, we need long-term partnerships with our retailers. There's no point. I'd be really upset if somebody was like, right, I'm going to get this pram. It's going to be amazing. And then 2 days before they're ready to purchase, the discount disappears. They'll be like, what was I doing all this for?
So what do you do? Do you have like a code that they can save on the side, or how does it work?
How does it work in terms of the card itself?
No, sorry, a code. Yeah. You said the discount.
Oh, yeah.
And if it disappears,
so the discount. So the discount's part of the account. So you spend on your Stork card and there's a discount, and it all just happens automatically. But I'm saying like the retailer stops the partnership is what I'm saying. We need to make sure the partnership keeps through. What we say to them when we start on is we say, look, we want you on our platform for a really long time. There's going to be people who aspire to kind of own your products and to own the ones you're selling. So therefore we make it a deal which is a long-term deal, not a short-term deal. With the type of product we are in general, there's lots of big comparison sites out there that kind of do lots of money product comparison. Much bigger companies, much more established finance sources, which means that they can take much bigger losses than we can. we're never going to be able to compete on price alone. The real competition is whether we have a product that differentiates itself enough that we can compete on the fact that it's a better product, not because it's the same thing as all those other financial products out there, just with a different logo and a different price point on it. With the retailers, this is what we're trying to get into as well. It's like, what's the aftercare? What is the other things that come with it? Is there a sort of club you join when you kind of buy from this, and kind of what's coming further on? So there's a real opportunity there to kind of start good retailer relationships there, as well as helping with the immediate need that all this stuff is hideously expensive.
Yeah, for sure. And so
it shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. It should all be readily available. And so obviously you've got your parameters for choosing your retailers, relatively high quality products that are going to obviously last for an extended period of time, naturally. Obviously it bodes well for your brand. And so with regards to, you said, is there going to be aftercare? Have you got a vision for there to be a community and other things moving forward? So obviously allow your users to interact with one another, or how does it look?
So this was another lesson we learned very early on, where we thought community is great, organic growth, get people talking. But this is a very sensitive subject. This is people's money. This is people's kind of hopes and fears. And as much as they're like, hey, I'm so excited, I'm going to have a baby, that bit in their mind that goes, how the hell am I going to afford this? That's a very kind of vulnerable moment and a very vulnerable thought. So going out and splattering it online is not something people will do. On lots of the mum forums, lots of parenting forums, there's a money section, but it's by far the least posted one on. Everyone's talking about the practical things, about nursing and about breastfeeding and about all the kind of, practical life things which people are fine talking about. It's amazing that people are fine talking about babies pooing down their tops, but talking about money, no. So the lesson was the fact that we've got to keep this with the people that they trust. We've got to keep it with their little village, the people which will support them, and they won't find it embarrassing to talk about this, and they won't find it, they can be vulnerable. Like the people they can be vulnerable in front of is key. So the community really is about building people's communities themselves. And as you said before, this product is designed to live through the entire life cycle of a family, from finding out you're pregnant with your first child all the way through to your youngest child going off to uni and beyond.
Shipping them off to uni.
So that's kind of what we're working. Yeah. That's the easy bit to define, but really being a parent never ends. So it does keep going. So it's really like the community is building the community for that stage, really, and throughout all those stages. And it's stronger if it's tight knit than if it's something that's very flowing and very open.
No, of course. So I just want to head back, because obviously I'm conscious of time. There are two things that I want to touch upon, and I think the first one is obviously your initial process for seeking angel investment, because obviously, as I'd mentioned before, you got your first you got your pre-seed round in November 2018. What was your process around achieving it, and I suppose how did you go about the valuation, how much equity you're going to give away, that kind of stuff? I think it's something that's very important for early stage startup founders. It's not a fucking clue a lot of the time.
It's something we're still learning. It's something which is different for each person, and it's different for each company, and it is really, really difficult. What we did back then is we looked at, we didn't have any revenue, we didn't have a product yet, and there was no real numbers to look at. So what we kind of did is went, right, let's look at these companies who are now much, much bigger, somewhat comparable, but not really. So, Moneybox is sort of comparable, but not really. We looked at Honeyfi, sort of comparable, but not really. And we looked at where they are now, and then we basically backtracked it and extrapolated it back to go, right, when they were at this stage, what did they look like? What was their valuation? How much did they successfully raise? And then we based it on those benchmarks. Is kind of how we valued it.
Comparable use cases.
So this time we're really looking at the metrics and what we're doing now. We're still pre-revenue, although technically this month we've started to make some revenue, but it's minuscule. We're raising this on kind of a pre-revenue front. So it's really about traction, and again, extrapolating that forward to the companies that successfully raised at this point, then went on to become successes. Their metrics were comparable in terms of the funnels, the user engagement, the retention, all those different engagement metrics, and then post it forward. In terms of approaching, I think it goes back to what I said before, where if you search out and are hanging around people who are interested in the same thing which you're interested in, and therefore creating a company around it, they will be interested in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, you find people who are interested in social impact fintechs, people that are looking and talking about how to make a difference with money, how to change people's relationship with money, how to enable people to live their lifestyle better that just happen to be run by money. And within that, you've got a whole mix of people. You've got some people who are interested, some people that kind of nod along, some people that are like, yeah, this is awesome, let's do some stuff, and you get some collaborations. And sometimes you get that person that kind of sits and goes, yeah, that's interesting. Let's have a conversation. And then it's like, oh, you would invest. Oh, that'll be lovely. That'll be great. Thank you so much. But I think the biggest mistake that we made is going, right, we've got a company, we can prove it, we've got the metrics, let's go after people for money. Because you call up and say, hey, my name's Bruce, you've never met me before, can I have some money, please? It doesn't work. This is people's children's inheritance, and you've got to persuade them that instead of their children getting inheritance, when they leave, they're going to invest in you, and it's going to create even more inheritance. So it's a real, for a lot of people, especially in the angel space, it's a really emotive thing to invest in a company. And it takes a lot of, I don't want to say persuasion, because if you have to persuade people, they don't truly believe in it from the start anyway, but it takes a great bit of communication, effective communication that took us a very long time to learn to do effectively. People buying in, the same reasons you get excited about it, the same reasons you jump out of bed in the morning and go, yes, I can't wait to do this thing for StorkCard. They need to be in the exact same state of mind.
No, for sure. And a lot of the time it's about demonstrating your passion for the product and demonstrating that there is a real market for StorkCard out there. And so did you end up finding your investor through just your local network, or did you end up cold approaching a few just randomly?
It was a mix of introductions from advisors and people we were talking to already. It was never like cold approach, yes, I'll invest. It was mostly you get in contact with somebody that's quite interesting, is posting some interesting stuff on your LinkedIn feed about it, and you kind of have a chat with them, and then who do they know? Can you introduce me to some people? And then it grows and it grows and it grows. I'm truly a believer in the fact there's no such thing as a wasted conversation. No matter who you talk to, they'll know something interesting. They'll know someone interesting. You might know something they find interesting. So there's no conversation that's not worth your time. And that's kind of how one thing leads to another, and you kind of get there. But it does take patience, and it does take a real kind of belief that you'll get there in the end, because it's not an algorithmic process. 1 + 1 does not equal investment. It's a long, old, windy thing which may or may not get there. I mean, maybe there's other people more experienced than me that kind of, do know that there is a formulaic way of doing it, but we haven't stumbled upon that
yet. No, I think it's just called the scattergun and refine approach, mate.
Yeah. One thing I'm enjoying at the moment, for example, is this new thing called lunchclub.ai, which automatically assigns you just someone to Skype with for an hour a week. So I'm really enjoying that, and I'm meeting some really interesting people through that. Last week it was somebody who is a spinal surgeon turned motivational speaker. Week after that, it's somebody who is after that was another fintech investor, actually. Week after that, it was somebody that's doing a queuing, building a queuing prediction system for takeout. And all of these people I've introduced to someone, they've introduced people to me, and it's just connections. So the more people you can go out there and meet, you don't know what you're going to find until you start talking to people.
Oh, absolutely. I haven't come across lunchclub.ai. I've been obviously using Shaper quite a bit, which is very useful.
Shaper is great.
It is great. And obviously, if you end up splashing out for the paid subscription, then you can obviously search by job title and things like that, which is cool.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes it a little bit more cold and functional. Whereas obviously what you were saying about lunchclub.ai, did you say it was rather randomized, or how do they pair you up?
It's pretty randomized. So what it does is it looks at who you've got to write a profile, who you are, what you do, etc. And then it goes, right, what are your interests? And then just finds you interesting people. You can use it and start putting a goal to it. So like, I want to learn about X. I want somebody who could introduce me to people in the Y space. So you can do that. but I like keeping it nice and informal, and kind of going, right, there's half an hour. I'm sitting here eating my lunch anyway. Let's talk to somebody interesting. It might be something I know absolutely nothing about, and it kind of enlightens you.
Oh, I quite like it. I think. Well, I've written it down, so
I was very worried at the beginning it was going to be a bit chat roulette-y, but it's not. It's very business focused.
God, let's not get into a conversation about chat roulette. I
Yeah,
enjoyed
I know. This is what
many humorous evenings.
Yeah, this is what I was worried about.
I'll move on swiftly from that, not implying anything. But you obviously, with regards to choosing your investors, what do you seek to? What kind of parameters do you have when seeking an angel? By the way,
number one, they've got to be excited by what we're doing. I really don't like the people who go, I've got a formula, insert CAC here, insert, retention here equals my return, yes or no.
Have you got an exit strategy?
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be some sort of plan of that, but I don't like, especially at seed stage, it doesn't make sense to do things purely on metrics because, a financial plan really is just a whole page of what's going to happen. I think one person told us, I want to see your financials, not because I care what they say, but because it tells me whether you're ambitious or not. If you project, 500,000 in revenue in 5 years, I'm like, yeah, go enjoy your nice family business. All good luck to you, but this is not for me. Or if you say, I'm going to make 500 billion in 5 years, I'm going, hey, you have no idea what you're talking about. Bye-bye. So it's like a framing exercise, really. I think the main thing is we've got to like them because you're going to have to do board calls with them the whole time. You're going to have to ask their advice the whole time. When you're in a sticky situation, they're going to be who you call. When you're doing really well, they're who you're going to call. So there's got to be a good relationship there. They've got to value the same things as you do because there's going to be decisions you want to make down the line, which you now have to get some sort of buy-in to do. And it's mostly just about, are they after the same mission as us? Our strong mission is improving family financial finance, changing how families have a relationship with money, and are they in for the same thing?
Last but not least, I want to ask you something that I've been approached about a couple of times, which was, it's a very simple one, but I suppose it's a more personal one. It's the ability to maintain momentum when you've started a business is something that a lot of people encounter. So we're moving away from the investing aspect, obviously.
Yeah.
What's your process? Do you have a set routine at home to keep you going? For instance, if anything hits you or you hit a particular stumbling block, do you have any methods to get past it, get over it, move on? I know you mentioned earlier about closing your laptop, taking off your specs and sitting down in front of the TV, but have you got anything else that you that facilitates your process?
I personally tend to have the opposite problem where I get excited about something and just go, instead of kind of sticking my hand down the rabbit hole to see what's down there, I'll be 2 miles down. And then somebody will go, Bruce, you got other things to do, right? And then oh God, I've just got a bit distracted. So one tactic that works really, really well is, as a team, we do demo time every single Friday. So every single Friday we get together. At the moment it's via, Zoom and Hangout, but usually it's kind of round the table in our office. Usually there's kind of, some beers or some wine or some kind of food or something to kind of, put a nice taste in your mouth. And everyone's got to demo something. So that could be something like, our CFO saying, hey, I've put this really nice model together for the revenue that's going to happen in the next 3 months. It could be me showing a new feature in the app. It could be me showing something really boring, like a new database structure. It could be something else, showing a really nice new ad creative that's been put together. Or it can be somebody just saying, I read a really nice book this week. It was talking about this. But what it shows, it kind of helps people kind of put a stamp on what they've done, what they've achieved, and what it's kind of done for the general good. So it stops you burning down that rabbit hole way too fast and going too deep, because you know that you're going to have to show something to everyone. And I don't want to look like an idiot when I come back to this week, say, to everyone, say, yeah, I was planning on doing this, but then I started looking at this, and then this, and then this, and then I've now got nothing to show you, because then I'm just like an idiot. So it's a really good thing. It's a kind of, make sure that everything you're doing is focused and progressing, but it's not just progressing the company, it's progressing yourself. A company is made of people, not of laptops and code. So if people are improving, the company itself is improving.
Amazing. And I think on that note, Bruce, I'm going to ask you to do 2 more things for me. Often at this point in the show, I ask my guests to first and foremost give me their best pitch for their product. Are you able to do that? Quick 15 to 20-second elevator pitch? Can't hit me.
Yeah, sure. StorkCard is the solution to hideously expensive parenting costs. You come up to them and you don't know they exist. But StorkCard puts them on autopilot, so you know exactly what's coming up in advance and giving you control of your future and your family happiness.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Pretty good.
That's not our official one. That's just one I made up.
No, it's good. I liked it. You did incredibly well. It was succinct, to the point. I think everyone knows exactly what your values are and exactly what you do. I think my favourite one was, I think a week ago, I had one with Ed Meacock from Tunable, which is basically an indie stock market, an indie music stock market. And his pitch, because he's very, very early stage. So like this is even pre-development stage, ideation, and he's his pitch was about 45 seconds to a minute long. It was hilarious. So I'm appreciating all the succinct ones at the moment, man. And just lastly,
when you pitch enough, you look over the room and you can see all the blank. If you pitch enough, you can look at the room and you can tell the moment that the eyes glaze over. And it's usually around 15, 20 seconds. So you're bang on the timing there.
It is indeed. Yeah, absolutely right. And mate, lastly, if you wouldn't mind just grabbing your phone, taking a selfie with me in the background, that'd be amazing.
Sure. No worries. There we go.
Perfect.
No worries.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, man. Excellent. Well, look, Bruce, I really, 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 really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for sparing an hour on a Tuesday evening. It's really kind of you. It was a pleasure to hear everything about StorkCard and obviously how you're progressing. Have you got anything else to say or leave my listeners with, or the 1 or 2 listeners out there that exist?
It'd be great to hear everyone's feedback and everyone's questions. Hit me up on LinkedIn. You send me a message there. We're really early stage. We're always looking for feedback. We're always looking for new ideas. So if any thought has come up whilst you're listening to this podcast, please let me know.
Amazing. And where can everyone go to check out StorkCard?
So the app is on both app stores. So go to Apple and search Apple App Store and search StorkCard. Same with the Google Play Store, or you can go to storkcard.com and read more about us. And obviously we're on Instagram and Facebook as well, and Twitter.
Sweet. Well, look, again, thank you everyone for watching. Really appreciate it. Tune back in on Friday. I've got an interview with Raj Sharma from Captivation, which is a smart nail brand. It's a very interesting one, so I'm looking forward to having a chat with him. Thanks again to Bruce, and tune back in for some real-time advice. Thank you very much, mate.